Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm a fourth year PhD student at Indiana University. I study rhetoric and composition, and today I want to talk to you all about how to write a personal statement that will hopefully get you accepted into grad school. So a quick little background. I went to the University of Florida for undergrad, and I applied to grad school during my senior year of college, so I went straight through with no gaps or anything. So I was very new to this process. I did not come in with a master's. My program here is a joint MA and PhD. So if I did it, you can do it, and anyone can do it, I promise. So I work with personal statements quite a bit because I am a writing tutor in my university's writing center, and I also teach writing classes as well. So I feel like I have learned a thing or two about how to craft the ideal personal statement. So this video is going to be catered specifically towards people applying for programs in the humanities, maybe specifically English or a closely related field. So let's hop into it. So first things first, let's talk about the goals of the personal statement. The goals of a personal statement are, one, to show that you know how to write. Two, to show that you have put some serious thought into applying to grad school and you're not just doing it because you have no idea what else to do with your life. Even if that is your motivation, we're going to try and keep that sort of under wraps. And the third thing is to show that you are able to articulate some type of research trajectory, or you have some sensible career goals, and this program is a good fit to help you get to where you want to be. And another thing about the personal statement is it is an opportunity to clear up any possible discrepancies that you might have in your transcripts or in your other application materials. For example, if there's a semester where your GPA really plummeted, that's your opportunity to quickly address. During the semester, I was dealing with the loss of a family member or this other really tragic event that caused this to happen. And the personal statement is the place to clarify that. So let's go into the structure. Personal statements are very interesting and can be a really fun genre to write, but they can also be very challenging because they're unlike any other essay that we're used to writing. So the typical college essay I teach first year writing that we teach our students to write is thesis driven, and then it goes into multiple reasons that all support that thesis, and then some type of conclusion that wraps it all up and opens out to the bigger picture. So the personal statement is a little bit different. It is not thesis driven, it is narrative driven, and you are basically telling some type of cohesive story. It doesn't necessarily have to be chronological, although it can be, but the goal is to tell your story while still answering the prompts. So each university will have a specific set of questions that they want you to answer, but for the most part, personal statements will ask you to identify why you want to go to the school, what you've done so far that prepares you to go to graduate school, what your short and long-term goals are, like within graduate school, but also after graduate school, career goals, and possibly any challenges or difficulties that you have had to overcome. Some universities get a little bit wild and have like oddly specific questions, but for the most part, those will be the main questions that universities want you to answer. So my suggestion for writing a personal statement is to start off with some type of story or anecdote. Not something that's crazy, fluffy, and irrelevant to your purpose, but something very neat, succinct, and relevant to your career goals. So drawing on my personal experience, when I applied to grad school, my personal statement articulated my career goals of wanting to work with English language learners, multilingual writers, to making the university and the world more equitable for people who do not speak English as a native or first language. So I drew upon my experience just in like 2 sentences, reading Gloria Anzaldua's Borderlands, which is written half in English, half in Spanish, blends multiple genres, multiple dialects of each language, and explained how when reading this, I had like a very significant impact, sort of like an epiphany when I was like a junior in college, and I was like, oh my god, this just really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And from then I decided that I wanted to pick up a minor in Spanish, and I really wanted to devote myself to taking language practices very seriously. So I wrote that anecdote in 2 sentences, and then I used it as a bridge to sort of explain what my long-term career goals are. And I said, therefore, I want to go to graduate school so I can do this type of work to make the university more equitable. And I was specifically interested in writing centers, so I brought that in there as well. So to recap, you want to start off with an anecdote that is relevant, concise, and succinct, and use that as a bridge to articulate your long-term goals. And that can basically be your first paragraph. And then for maybe the body of the essay, You can choose to make it 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs, again, from my experience. And this is where you will want to focus on 2 specific events. They can be academic related, but they do not have to be. And you will use them to explain how you are the person you are today in terms of your research interests, in terms of significant personality traits, in terms of how that's also shaping your career goals, before you get to your conclusion where you tailor it to the specific university. So the anecdotes that I drew upon were my independent study that I did in undergrad, and I said here was the type of research I was doing and here's the questions that it has led me to ask now. And that was sort of checking the box that personal statements are looking for, that I know how to articulate some type of loose research plan, and I have some specific questions that are a little bit more narrowed down than I'm interested in writing and how we teach writing, which is funny because like that's where I'm at now in my dissertation research. But yeah, I was able to say I'm researching specifically how English language learners are treated in writing centers, and I'm noticing this sort of discrepancy in research methodologies, which has led me to think about this. So that checked that box. And then the second thing that I talked about was sort of my diverse background in education, and I said that I studied language from both like an art perspective and like a science perspective, because I also had a minor in linguistics. So I felt that I had like a multifaceted understanding of how language works, how writing works, and things like that. So those were my 2 experiences, and they were both academic, but I have seen very successful personal statements draw upon experiences with a study abroad trip, draw upon personal experiences with being a caretaker for someone who is disabled, draw upon personal experiences of personal trauma. There are all types of experiences that you can draw upon as long as they are relevant to your career goals, to your desires within grad school or after grad school, to who you are today. And if you do choose to focus on like a significant difficulty that you've overcome, some type of trauma, some type of tragedy, it's really, really, really important that you are not positioning yourself as someone who is whiny. And I know that that sounds really, really abrasive to say, but it is not a good personal statement to spend half of it explaining that you went through this really horrible traumatic event. You want to talk about that as quickly as possible and spend the bulk of it explaining why that was significant, explaining how that shaped you into the person you are today. That is what is significant. So to recap, for the body of the essay, you can choose to make it 1 long paragraph or 2 paragraphs, focusing on 1 to 2 specific anecdotes or instances and relating them directly to your career goals or relating them directly to who you are as a person and how that's going to help you succeed in grad school. And then lastly, that brings you to the conclusion. So for my personal statements, I applied to like 7 or 8 schools, and I used the same personal statement for pretty much every school except for one that had very different prompts. And the first 3 paragraphs for every school were exactly the same, but the last paragraph is where the tailoring really comes in, and that is where you tailor it specifically to the university to which you're applying. So I said, at Indiana University, I would like to work with this professor and this professor because of their research doing blank. You can bring in specific job opportunities that university might offer you. Like I noticed that you all offer graduate students the opportunity to serve as assistant directors of composition or to serve as program coordinators for multilingual composition. Those would be things to bring in that final paragraph. And it's always nice to have sort of like one last line in your conclusion. I know this is really hard, and I see students all the time really struggle and want to say, so that's it, all right, thanks for reading, because I do the same thing in my own writing. But for example, my last line was, my education at blank university will prove invaluable in working towards achieving my professional goal of directing a writing center that does not further marginalize English language learners, but instead teaches them to capitalize upon their unique voice. So it's sort of like this powerful, punchy final line that will set you apart and leave you being remembered in the minds of the people who are on the board of admission. And then lastly in this video, I want to quickly talk about some very common mistakes that I see in personal statements. I've touched on a few. To reiterate, one that I see very frequently in the beginning of these videos is a really cliche, sort of cheesy line like, ever since I was 7 years old. I've fallen in love with reading and I just want to read books and study language for the rest of my life. So you're going to want to stay away from things like that. You're going to want to stay away from talking about that time when you were 13, curled up on a rainy day, reading a Harry Potter novel. While all those things are great, those are not really striking the right tone of a personal statement. To give you a specific example of my first line of my personal statement, I said, I have long been interested in both the art and science of language, but it was not until I read Gloria Anzaldúa's Borderlands La Frontera, the New Mestiza, that I recognized my passion. So I quickly addressed, yeah, I've been interested in writing for as long as I could speak, but I said, here's the specific moment in which it really clicked for me and I knew that I wanted to go to grad school. Something else that I see a lot is writing that is just very fluffy and not professional. Again, spending too much time describing those instances and using words like, I was absolutely enthralled, or I was completely overjoyed. And talking about the actual experience instead of focusing on why it was significant, instead of focusing on how it grew you, how it shaped you to have these career goals. Also, those are really wordy and not concise. Typically, personal statements, you only have one page, single spaced. So you're going to want to make it as concise as possible. Do not use double adjectives. Cut out all the reallys, veries, so's, because you probably don't need them. Another mistake that I see is not answering the specific prompt. So like I said, this format works really well for most prompts that I have personally seen within the humanities, specifically within English departments, where you're focusing on your career goals, 2 specific events, and then that conclusion that explains why this university is a good fit, why you're a good fit for this university as well. But sometimes, like I said, universities get a little wild with their prompts, so make sure that you're reading them and not taking them for granted. If they're asking you to answer a specific question, make sure you're answering that. Sometimes I've seen universities ask for like, what specific traits do you have and how have you achieved those traits and how will that help you succeed in grad school and beyond? So that's going to look like a little different essay. So you want to make sure that you're reading those and really addressing those prompts in order to show that you know how to follow directions and make the strongest case for your application. And then finally, I touched on this already, but make sure that you're not presenting something that is like a sob story or overly whiny, because like I've reiterated multiple times just now, you want to make sure you're focusing on how you've grown from it. So that is all that I have about personal statements. So I hope this video was helpful for you all. Please feel free to leave a comment with absolutely any questions you have. I always have my email in the description box as well as my Instagram. Feel free to shoot me an email, feel free to send me a DM, and I am more than happy to help. I know that when I was applying to grad school, I was absolutely lost and confused and felt like I was completely on my own, aside from the help of like one mentor professor. So I would absolutely love to help you, just chat with you, let you know that you are not alone in this process and that it can be extremely stressful. And once again, if I could do it when I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, you can do it as well. I really want to help as many of you achieve your dreams as possible, as lame as that sounds. So this video has been a long time coming. So thank you guys so much for your patience and thank you guys for watching. So if you want to continue to keep up with my grad school chats or my vlogs, make a lot of day in the life, week in the life, weekends in the life, please subscribe to my channel. And that's all that I have for you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!